Hey there, folks. Happy Sunday to you. Hope you're having a fantastic weekend. Coming at you with this week's market wrap and stocks to watch for next week. Got a lot to go through, so I'm just going to jump right in. Let's go through the indexes first. So listen, last week, we had the big sell-off day, and I'm going to just call that day a warning shot, right? Let's look at that as a warning shot. We still we had a pretty nice little bounce on Thursday and Friday. Got a little bit of follow through on the bounce, but I think we still are a little bit guilty until proven innocent. I mean, it's nice to see us bounce. The volume wasn't as much on the bounce. Let's see if we pull back. I mean, we've got a lot going on, right? We got more stuff going on with North Korea. We've got this whole Trump fiasco. We got him overseas. Who knows what he's going to say next? That might stir the pot. But we've still got some stuff out there that could be troubling. So the other thing we have going on this week is we have a tremendous amount of economic data, and we have a tremendous amount of Fed speak, right? So we've got Chicago Fed, we've got Kashkari, Harker, Evans, we got all kinds of people speaking from the Fed, and then we have the FOMC minutes, which will come out on Wednesday, and maybe we get a rate increase. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We get new home sales, Fed manufacturing index, mortgage applications, composite PMI, composite flash, existing home sales, petroleum status report. Then on Thursday, we get international trade in goods. We get jobless claims, comfort index. We've got a lot going on, along with more Fed speak. And then we get durable goods orders on Friday, and then GDP, which is always a big one, consumer sentiment. So a lot going on this week in terms of economic data heading into a long weekend, right? So we've got Memorial Day weekend coming up. We'll be closed on the following Monday. Let's see how the market reacts. So like I said, I'm still a little bit cautious. I feel as though that day that we had where we closed on the low of the day was kind of a warning shot, and I think it's just, be cautious. Let's be a little bit cautious out there. All right, so NASDAQ, a little bit of a bounce. Didn't quite come down and fill the gap or test the 50-day moving average. We'll see if we continue to drift lower, close this gap, and test the 50-day. Let's take a look at financials, which were pretty weak, right? Got out of the lower Bollinger Band and actually had a nice little bounce, but still, look, it's still got to come up and deal with this trend line. It's got to come up and deal with the 50-day moving averages. So, could it go up and fill this gap? It could, but then what, right? Then do we pull back and continue that move lower? And then maybe retest this 4130 area and lose that as price support. So, financials, I think you need to be a little bit cautious there. Gold actually had a pretty nice little move, got back above the 200-day moving average, the 50-day moving averages, but it's overbought, right? So don't necessarily have to see a big pull back. Maybe what happens now is we just consolidate out a little bit right on top of the 200-day, build a little bit of a base before we try and take that out. Now there is a gap to fill. Could come down and test right around 118 or so, see it close that gap and then bounce. So gold, is worth probably keeping an eye on. Definitely don't chase it, right? If you see the gap in the morning, what you haven't seen a lot of is you haven't seen a lot of follow through on GDX, GDXJ, JNUG, Nugget, any of those, right? You get a gap and then there's very little follow through. So worth keeping an eye on, but be careful and don't chase in that space. IBB, so in a little bit of a downtrend here, short-term downtrend, below the 50-day moving average, below the 50 EMA, and could potentially pull back and test the 200-day somewhere around 283. That would take us also. The thing that wouldn't be good about that is we'd be taking out this long-term trend line as support. So right now we're just kind of coiling up. We'll see which way we wind up breaking. 300 has been a very difficult place to get through. Maybe we go back up and test there. We'll see. We closed basically right on the low of the day on Friday, right at potential price support. We lose that 100 EMA, we lose that trend line, it becomes problematic for the IBB. IWM small caps, not a really pretty chart, right? So, and this is why I say let's look at this as a warning shot, right? So there's a gap to fill. We're below the 50-day moving average. We're below the 50 EMA. We did get a little snapback, right? Closing the lower portion of this candle. Could we go back up and test this trend line, test the 50-day? We could, but then what happens? Do we find that as resistance and pull back, continue to drift lower? We'll find out, right? If we break below 132, that's where it gets a little problematic for me. And I think other people would be looking for maybe support on a break through 130, break through the 200-day, and then that's where it really becomes problematic. But still not a real good-looking short-term chart on IWM. So be careful in the small cap space. Transportation broke below price support, actually did come down and test the 200-day, right? And we bounced, but now we've got some work to do, right? And that's why I say we're guilty until proven innocent. We've got to get back up through that 50-day moving average, right? Back up through this short-term trend line, back up through the 100 EMA, right? So we've got some work to do. We've got some resistance above, and we'll see how it acts as it approaches that. Which we could just grind up, right? Which makes it, you get a lot of choppy action out in the market there. So we'll see what happens with IYT. IWM, I talk about this all the time. If it does wind up breaking down, then LABD, keep that on your radar for a potential trade opportunity. And TZA, same thing with the small caps. If small caps break down, keep TZA on your radar for a potential day trade opportunity. All right, let's take a look at, so there are a couple of spaces that, and I'll go through it in a minute, we'll look at the earnings that are coming up for next week, but there are a couple of spaces that are interesting to me, that look kind of interesting, right? Oil and the energy space almost looks like there were some charts that were actually kind of bouncing, breaking trend lines, short-term trend lines to the upside. We did reclaim $50 a barrel in oil. Let's see if we get any follow-through in oil. Maybe with the Saudi Arabia thing that's going on this weekend, maybe there is something there for continued strength in oil. If that's the case, maybe we get some nice bounce plays in the oil space. But we'll look at that in a second. Let's take a look at the SMH. Before we go there, Robo. So, I pointed this out to the members over at Alpha Wolf Trading, about a week or so ago, and I really do like this space and like this ETF for a potential long-term hold position. Looked as though I was going to get, when we had this pullback, I'd really like to see it come down and close the gap, and maybe it doesn't close this gap here, but I'd love to see it come down and test this area of price support somewhere around $32 or $31.50. Test this trend line. I would be very interested in taking it there. Looked like maybe it was going to head that direction when we got the pullback, but boy, it bounced back really nicely, and it's testing all-time highs. So a lot of strength in this Robo, but and I think it's more of a long-term hold proposition than it is a day trade. but pretty darn good looking. Look, I mean, look at the monthly. Look at that, just beautiful, grinding higher. And I think that's one you want to really keep an eye on. And I would welcome, you know, if the market really pulls back, I would welcome a pullback in this 32, 31.50 area, and likely start building a position in that area. All right, so SMH, you know, look, you can't keep this sector down, man. You know, Nvidia is on fire. That's probably might be getting a little bit extended, but you know, things can stay overextended for a long time. But SMH, you know, gapped above this trend line, not on real convincing volume though, right? Gonna have some resistance right here at 85 or so. We'll see how it acts there. Do now have this gap to potentially fill, but this remains a really good looking solid sector. S&P 500 did break, you know, we closed below the 50-day moving average. It's a big deal, right? Now we are, looks like we almost came up and filled the gap there. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we can fill this gap, and let's see what happens at 2405, right? If 2403, which is this area of 2400 appears to be acting as resistance. So we'll see how we react if we can get up there to the 2400 and close that gap. We'll see what happens. But S&P 500, I still think looks somewhat guilty till proven innocent. Let's take a look at, so, you know, I want to look at, so another space, so oil was one, and another one is C. Now, shippers. You know, we had a couple of shippers, couple of shippers that started showing some activity last week. And we've got a few shippers that are reporting this week. As a matter of fact, let's see, where is it? Starbulk is reporting, and I can't remember the other one that's reporting, but we've got oh, no, I can't find it. There's a couple of shippers on here that are reporting, and that could do a little something for the shipping space. I consider all of those to be potential day trade opportunities. You know, NMM was one that started to move last week, right? Coming up right into resistance, reclaim the 200-day, coming up into the 50 EMA. Maybe you get some follow through, get a trend line break there, but it has moved already 2 days into the move. So maybe you have one more day in the move. SBLK was another one that I happened to notice that got a little bit of a pop on Friday. Coming up, actually, you know, you can draw these things. I mean, basically came down to the 200-day moving average. It looks like got real close to there. If we really want to draw that line a little bit better, right? Broke the trend line already on Friday. So maybe you get some follow through. It's going to have some resistance up here at the 50-day moving average, but another one that had a little bit of a bounce on Friday. SALT is another one that's sitting right on top of the 200-day moving average, right? So if shippers do get some action, then maybe we get a trend line break. Now, it's going to have all this resistance above, but you know, it can have some pretty decent moves. It's only got 36 million shares in the float, and it's right on top of the 200-day. Good place for it to potentially bounce. CMRE was another one. Oh, no. That's not the one. CMRE. There we go. Integrated Shipping, CMRE. There's another one that was getting a little bit of action on Friday, right? And it's got kind of an interesting... Now, this is probably one of my favorite looking setups here. And it's on my... I think I put it on the stocks to watch list. If not, I'll make sure I do it right now. CMRE. So, I really like this setup, and that is because of the fact that it's got 36 million shares in the float. it's over the 200-day moving average. It broke over there, pulled back, tested it, bounced, consolidating. Stochastics curling up, right? And you've got the 50, which is getting ready to cross over the 200-day, and that is the golden cross. So this one's got a pretty interesting, compelling look. And if shippers go in play, this might be one to have on your radar for a potential trade opportunity. Look for an $8 roll, maybe go up and test $8.60 or so and close the gap on the daily. But pretty nice looking chart there. All right, so shippers, I think you want to keep an eye on those. Oil and energy, I think you want to keep an eye on those. Right? May get some bounces in that space, in both those spaces. All right, let's take a look at volatility, which had a one-day spike and then pulled back. But look, if the market continues to sell off, if we get some kind of new shoe drop with the Trump administration, who knows? Maybe we get another spike in volatility. Look, you look to play those for day trade only because you just never know what's going to happen the following day, right? So, and they have a I can't think of what I want to say. Bottom line is TVIX and UVXY. I consider those day trade opportunities. You can keep a small position of lottos if you think you're going to get some follow through, but you can see closed right at the high, and the very next day we pulled back. Next couple of days. So, but look, if things weaken out there, these things are great. There's nice range, so you can get some nice range. Speaking of nice range, talked about BRZU on Thursday, which gave some really tremendous range. Not so much the following day, right? Completely out of the lower Bollinger Band. I haven't seen a lot of Brazil news over the weekend, but on a pullback to $23 or so, I think maybe that gets, or $24, maybe it's compelling to take for a bounce. Now it might just consolidate here for a little bit, but huge gap down. And thing closed at 44 and then opened at 23 or $24 or whatever it was, and there could be some more trading opportunities in the BRZU as well. So keep an eye on that. All right, let's take a look at the USO real quick. So a little bit of a gap on Friday, back over the 50-day moving average, still below the 200-day. Little overbought, according to stochastics, right? So let's see what. But like I said, there were some interesting looking charts out there in the oil and energy space, and I've got some here that one of the members over at Alpha Wolf Trading sent in with their trade plan. Has quite a few oil and energy names on his list as well, and I do think it is worth keeping an eye on. Just remember that it's been up a few days in a row, so and it's coming up into potential price resistance. We'll see what happens, but I think that space is worth definitely keeping an eye on. The dollar, completely out of the lower Bollinger Band, has been pretty weak. If the dollar continues to decline, that might not be such a good thing for the markets, but we'll see if we get some kind of a bounce. If we get any kind of strength in the dollar, then I would look for some weakness in gold and the miners, and possibly even oil. So we'll see. Aerospace and defense, a little bit of a bounce after piercing the 100 EMA. Wound up, now it's right back up into potential price resistance and a trend line. We'll see how it acts. I do like aerospace defense, the sector. We have a couple aerospace defense names reporting this week. I'm trying to think of who they were. KLX, I think, is one. And maybe it was HEICO. HEICO. Let me see. No, that wasn't. Yeah, no, yeah, HEICO, Aerospace and Defense. That's actually a few aerospace defense names that we're reporting. So I think that is worth keeping an eye on as well. All right, so let's see what else we got. So home builders, a little bit of a bounce coming up into potential trend line resistance. I actually sold BZH this week. Pro members had a little swing trade in there, made a decent little clip on it. But on that day that we had the big pull, I felt it was prudent to lock some profits, and that's what I did. BZH still looks good. I actually, want to get back in it, right? It actually bounced really nicely. It's flirting with the $15 holla. If we get weakness in the overall market, I think maybe we get a pull. I would love to get this back into this somewhere around the 50-day moving average or 13 bucks as an entry. But if it takes out 15 with some conviction, I may wind up jumping back in and taking it again. But I do want to keep a close eye on home builders. We'll see how it acts coming up into that trend line, and specifically, we also have a home builder reporting next week. We've got, where is it? Toll Brothers reporting. So that could be, that could impact the home builders, that space. So they report Tuesday before the open. All right, so building materials, a little bit of a bounce, but still has, a trend line to try and get through. Did reclaim, no it didn't, right at the 50-day moving average. We'll see how it does next week. Energy, a little bit of a bounce, but has the trend line and the 50-day overhead as resistance. We already talked about financials. Industrials, a little bit of a bounce right off the 100 EMA. See if they get any follow through. XLU, this is interesting. This has been consolidating and basing for a while. Over the 200-day, on top of the 50-day, flirting with the 52 roll. I mean, this is a heck of a flat top breakout look, right? Market rolls over, people move into utilities for safety or perceived safety. This is a pretty interesting looking setup on utilities. I'm trying to figure out what that's trying to tell us. Healthcare actually pierced below the 50-day moving average. Came down and tested price support, but still in a little bit of a short-term downtrend. Maybe look for this to come back down, drift, work its way down towards the 200-day. I don't know. Could be a double top right here on healthcare. Let's see what else we've got going on here. Consumer discretionary pulled back right to the 50-day, got a little bit of a bounce. We'll see if that acts as a double top. Now it's messing with that trend line. We'll see how it acts there, and if it can maintain support at this 50-day moving average. Let's see. Metals and mining, a little bit of a bounce. Right at resistance, below the 200-day, below the 50-day. Oil and exploration, a little bounce. We already talked about oil. And retail. Looks like retail may be trying to find some price support in this area. Maybe it just works its way back into the Bollinger Band. But boy, I got to tell you, my least favorite sector. I think I say that every week. Doesn't mean that can't get a bounce there somewhere. Sports Warehouse, actually, I had on my radar on Friday as a potential trade. Better than expected earnings, but boy, that space is just not looking very good. So we'll see if this holds its support here. But that's it. That's the wrap for the market overall. And for most part, there are a lot of sectors out there that are still, to me, in question, right? So let's see how things play out. Let's see what the Fed has to say this week. Let's see how that impacts the markets, and let's see what happens with earnings. Speaking of earnings, let's take a look at them. So, as I've stated before in the past, a lot of times I put the black boxes around. I'm interested in the earnings. I'm not so much interested to really take a trade. I'm interested to see how they might impact the sector. See if maybe after earnings they could set up for a trade, but there are only a few names on here that I'm really interested in for potential day trade. We've got auto parts, which AutoZone that's reporting. We've got Advanced Auto Parts, and then we've got this Modine. So if these two report good earnings, maybe Modine gets a pop, right? I think it's worth keeping an eye on it for a sympathy trade if these guys report good earnings. Momo, which has had a lot of Momo, reports earnings, and it's flirting with all-time highs. So it's either gonna, if they don't crush it, then it could pull back after the significant run that it's had. If they do crush it, the sucker could go, and it's worth keeping an eye on that one. OOMA has a nice looking setup. We'll go through it in a minute. I've got it on the list of stocks to watch. This Bristow is actually kind of interesting for a setup. And then Marvel Technology, which actually has already started to run into earnings, so I don't know necessarily that I'm all that interested in that one. Especially if it continues to run into earnings, then I'd probably just sit on the sidelines, see what earnings are, see if we get a pullback, and look for some kind of support. So that's the list of stocks that I'm really interested in for next week. As far as earnings, speaking of SPHW, I happen to have it up on the list. All right, SPHW. Actually, this was sent in by one of the Alpha Wolf Trading Pro members, Peter, sending me his trade plan, sending me his breakdown, showing me he's doing his homework, right? Entry, $5.20, which is a pullback basically to an area of price support. Stop 470, which is just below this area of potential price support. First target 575, second target 7. That's an aggressive target on 7, but I like it. Could certainly head that direction. So let's see. Second target 7. I was day trading this one on Friday. I think it would be a great swing on a pullback to 520. It was prior resistance, hopefully now support. Stop would be below the short-term EMAs. First target is just at the 100 EMA, and if it gets through that, I think you can see a push to 7, which is 200 EMA. Earnings were already released. The daily has a nice bottoming formation with big volume candle on Friday. I agree with all of that, and I think looking for a pullback is a good approach to it. Look, maybe a red to green move on this one, and then take out that 100 EMA with some conviction. All right, let's take a look at the next one, INVE. So this had a nice volume pop on Friday. It's only got 9.9 million shares in the float. Second day of the pop, closed right at the 50 EMA, but did take out this trend line. So looking for maybe a red to green, pulled back to the 200 day, or no, that's not the 200 day. That's my line. Pull back to 550 or so, and maybe get a bounce. I mean, that was a decent volume bar on Friday. Look for some follow through on this. If it can take out the $6 holla, I think you get a test up into the 620 area where you probably would scale out a little bit and then maybe you hold some lottos to see if you can get a pop up to 675, maybe you can get a 7 test. Okay, so red to green move on that one. INVE, small float. Make sure you got some volume. You got to have liquidity to be able to get in and out. But not a bad looking setup. WTW still has a huge short interest, 44% short of the float, 21.5 million shares in the float, which is a small float. Testing the $26 holla. Looking for a red to green move on that one as well, right? Pull back to, actually pull back to about 25 bucks or so. Maybe you get a 25 test and then bounce, retest 26, take that out. Decent volume on Friday. Worth watching for a day trading opportunity. REN, I actually wanted to swing that way back in the $15 or $16 area. And no, didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to work out. So this is REN. This is sent in by Peter. It's kind of interesting. Got a real area of support here. This could be a double bottom. We'll see. Kind of interesting. This has a big short interest, small float, 18 million shares in the float. Entry 42.50. All right, so this is a little area of potential price support and resistance. First stop is 41, so risking $1.50. First target 45. Okay, to make 250. That's 2 to 1. Second target 48. Energy sector as a whole looks good for play this week. I'm seeing higher lows. XLE, REN had a great day on Friday. Relatively high volumes. Stochastics turning up. I'd like to see red green play. Stock has some nice range. This would be a day trade. If I saw a deeper pull toward 40, I would look for a good swing setup at that level. Earnings already happened for this quarter. I mean, I like it. I like the potential setup there, and I think a red to green is a ideal potential setup. WLL sent in also. This is also sent in, and this was on my radar as well. This is one of those names that I saw get a nice little bounce on Friday, testing the 50 EMA, closed above the 50 SMA. Likely going to go up and test somewhere around that 200-day moving average and the price resistance around $9.60 or so. 855 entry, stop 830, first target 9, second target 950. Great plan. The similar to the REN setup, many other EMP names, stochastics are turning up, short-term EMAs are currently higher. Ultimately needs to break 9, the 50 EMA for a move higher, but I think it's heading that way. Earnings already were reported. So I like it. I like the setup. This is a thicker stock though, and here's the problem. This is more of a swing than it really is a day trade. Now it can have some decent moves in a day, but it really probably is more of a swing than a day trade just because of the size of the float. And it doesn't have a big short interest, but 13% still decent. If it does get some action, maybe you get a little bit of a squeeze. But I like WLL as well. BLPH insider buy on May 19th for $1.40, 10,000 shares. Nothing significant, but stochastics curling up. It's been holding the 50-day moving average. Consolidated, I think earnings are just already behind it. Looking for a potential trading opportunity here. Take out this trend line. Take out 160 with some conviction. Maybe we get a test up to $2. Day trade scalp. In Neos, specialty generic. Insider buys 754 to 761 in May. Cohen just put a price target of it at $20. Took out the $8 holla. Now it's the other thing I like about it is look at all the moving averages just crossed over the 200 day. So maybe this is better on a pullback to 750, right? That would be maybe a better, more ideal entry, or even $7, somewhere in that area. But looking for potential red to green day trade on this. It's only got 19 million shares in the float, 13% short interest. So looking for a day trade opportunity there. CYH, probably more of a, I don't know, maybe a swing. You know, it's been sitting right here at this 200 day. We just had the 50 day and the 100 day EMA cross above the 200 day. So you got the golden cross. Had a pop. Been consolidating. Looking for it to take out $10 holla. 80 million shares in the float. 25%, 26% short interest. Could be a day trade. Could be a riskier swing. Because, you know, it does appear as though they're losing money. Stochastics have curled to the upside. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think it's worth watching. It can have some nice pops. You want to see some volume in the trade. Could be a higher risk swing or a potential day trade if it gets some real action. WTTR, recent IPO. I just like the rounding of this thing, right? Nice rounding action here, coming back up into the $16 holla, trying to take that out. You know, you take out 1655 and you're in all blue skies right now. We don't have a lot of historical data here on this one. Okay, it looks like they reported earnings and they were better than anticipated. So this one's kind of interesting. I just like the big cup here. Worth watching WTTR. It's small float. Got to make sure you have some volume. 200,000 shares traded on Friday. 8.8 million shares in the float and almost 8.5% short interest. ECA, this was sent in by Peter. So, you know, another oil and gas name coming up, testing these moving averages. Entry target 11, stop 1008. First target 1140, second target 12. Have been watching this name. It's also EMPNA, and they reported great earnings, and there has been a lot of aggressive auction activity in it over the past months. Stochastics are oversold. It's bouncing off its 200 EMA. We can see some nice upside in this name, especially if energy names go. 1 billion shares in the float. This is probably more of a swing or long-term hold type trade than it is a day trade. It can have some nice runs though, right? It can have some nice little pops, but I really think this is probably more of a swing or a long-term hold than it is a day trade. But I agree on the setup. POT, agriculture is another area where I saw a little bit of a bounce. You know, potash got a little bit of action, almost 1 billion shares in the float there. A couple other names. CF was another one that got a little bit of a bounce, and I think Agrium, I think, had a little bounce. You know, another name that we've been watching closely in Alpha Wolf trading is IPI, which has got a really nice flag on the daily. It's above its 200-day moving average, above the short-term moving averages. Had a nice little run, pierced the upper Bollinger Band, consolidating. Ideally, love to get this on a pullback to $2. Don't know that it's going to get there, but that would be a really good entry. Somewhere about $1.95, $2 would be ideal entry. But if you get a trend line break, this could get interesting. A lot of insider buying at $1.20. Recently, when they did there's a insider buy at $1.29, but they just did a big offering. So there's a $1.20, 6.3 million shares, 3.2 million shares, 3.1 million shares. That's where they participated in the offering and extinguished their long-term debt, I believe, in a much better position than they were in. But this one is worth keeping an eye on as well for a trend line break or a pullback to $2 for a swing. All right, let's see, where was I? POT. Right, so POT, potentially, it is a thicker stock. Could be more of a swing. right? See if you get a red to green move, some follow through, take out the 50-day moving average. If we do, potentially get a 17 test on this, or maybe come up and test the 200-day somewhere around 1725 or so, where we got some potential price resistance. BBG, so here's an EMP name that I came across. Up a couple of days, broke the trend line, closed above the 50-day moving average, took out the $4 holla. Looking for maybe a red to green and get a test up into the $4.50 area, right? But it, maybe $4. You pull back to 4 or 390 or 395, and you take it for a red to green move and a bounce up to 450. That's a day trade opportunity. 66 million shares in the float, 16% short interest. I think worth having on the radar for a day trade. BLDP had earnings, has had some recent contract news. I think what's impressive is it pulled back. This could be a pop and flopper. It pulled back to the 50-day. We got a little bit of a pop on Friday, million shares. I'm not sure. I think this is a fairly small float. I'm not sure. I have to double check, but potential continuation. I think you get, maybe a 3 test and roll, get up to about $3.10 or so. Worked off the overbought conditions. Stochastics have curled to the upside. I think it's worth keeping an eye on. It can be a little bit of a frustrating trader, more of a grinder, could be more of a swing than a day trade, but worth having on the radar. So along with those ag names, looking at some farm and construction equipment stuff, and this MTW had a big pop, pulled back, stochastics are curling, and it reclaimed the 200-day. And if you look at it, it's tapped this area a bunch of times. So maybe it gets. It's kind of been just bouncing back between these two areas, 620 and 530, right? Bouncing back and forth. So maybe we get another test up to that 620. Might have some resistance right around $6 or 580 or so, right here at the 50-day moving average. But if it can power through that, I think you get a 6 test. And this has got 136 million shares in the float. It's probably it could probably be more of a swing, but it has had some nice pops. So maybe a day trade if you have some real volume. It is in a spot where it seems to like the bounce, so worth keeping an eye on. MTW. LPTH. So AAOI is got a really nice looking chart, and could be looking to potentially break higher. We'll see. And it's got a nice consolidation. Whichever way AAOI goes, I think LPTH goes, right? So in the same space, if AAOI breaks higher, I think you see LPTH break higher. And I think maybe we get up and test that 319, possibly even take it out. So, stochastics are starting to curl. Not a lot of volume here. Ideally, I would have loved to have seen this pull back to about $2.50. I have a position in this. I would look to add into that position at $2.50, but worth keeping an eye on LPTH. They just reported earnings, and earnings were pretty good. But it's having some difficulty with trying to get through 320. JASO, Peter sent this one in. Entry 7, stop 650, target 750. All right, so 1 to 1. He's risking 50 cents to make 50 cents. Not a great risk reward there. Second target 8. That's a better risk reward, right? Solar sector also looks good. Pullback. Many of the solar names do like JASO. There might be a run up into earnings, which are happening on Wednesday. I would not hold into earnings, but it might be a nice day trade before then. It does have an interesting looking chart. I think it becomes more compelling at 650, right at the at the 50-day moving average, right? That's where it becomes compelling for a potential entry for me. Just had this 50-day cross above the 200-day, so that's pretty nice. But I would want it. I probably would not want to take it at 7. Probably would be looking to take it at 650, and then put a stop at 6 or 599, and then keep my same target, right, of 750. So now I'm risking 50 cents to make a buck instead of 50 cents to make 50 cents. VSTM, insider buy, 30,000 shares, $2.45 on May 17th. I like the look of it. I like the fact that it's been consolidating. It's over the 200-day. It's over the 50-day rising. It may need more time to consolidate. Maybe it pulls back to $2 and tests that as support, or 210. But that could be an interesting place to take it. Potentially a swing or a day trade. Higher risk swing, because it is a biotech. 36 million shares in the float, small float. Really probably just want to take this for a day trade on a break over the trend line, or maybe on a pullback to 2 for a bounce. ATHX, another biotech name. It kind of has an interesting look right on top of the 50-day moving average. You know, it's been consolidating. There's been some insider buying in the dollar range. $11 price target from William Blair. Needham put a price target of $7 on it. It's under the 200-day moving average, consolidating, nice tight formation. Maybe it's looking to build some energy before trying to take that out. We need the IBB to cooperate though, so keep that in mind. NAK, entry 171, stop 160, first target 185, second target 2. Name is very choppy, it passed spacing nicely. I believe it's just recently did a secondary, so it wouldn't be in cash. Looking red to green, entry 171, stops would be below the short-term moving averages. Day trade only, size appropriate, Peter. I'm not crazy about that chart. I'm just not, for some reason. Well, I mean, it is over the 200-day. Yeah, would want to see some volume, and it would be really a day trade only. And I would not chase that thing. All right, AFMD, one of the other members in Alpha Wolf Trading, had a nice size position in this. Got it in, I think, the 2 and 10 or 2 and 20 range, and actually scaled out of his position on Thursday or so. Had a nice little trade in that bad boy, and you know, it's testing this 250 area. It's got, I think it's going to be part of the ASCO conference coming up in June. It could get some action. 34 million shares in the float. Not a big short interest. Looking for a flat top breakout. Think maybe get a test up to 275. Looking for a day trade in it. Not looking to own it into that ASCO event, but worth watching. Wi-Fi, I think they just reported earnings and they were good. Nice pop. Consolidating, looking for a 16 roll, trend line break. If it pulls back to the 50-day, this could be an interesting area to take it for a swing. 37 million shares in the float, not a big short interest. Decent volume on Friday, so looking for a trend line break really for a day trading opportunity. It can have some nice range in a day off of a good pop. Worth keeping an eye on. Wi-Fi, OOMA. This is the one that has earnings, I think it's Tuesday after the close. And I really like the setup here. Flirting with the $12 holla. Maybe it pulls back to the 50-day heading into earnings, and then after earnings we get a pop. But recent IPO is OOMA. And it really is a good looking setup on the daily here. And if they have good earnings, it takes out 12.25. You know, look for maybe it to pull back after, you know, the earnings settle down a little bit. See if it pulls back to that 12.25 as support. That could be an interesting area maybe to take it for a swing on a pullback to that 12.25 area. LLNW, watching it last week. I actually had a limit buy on this at what was it, 285 or 295, something like that. And then I wound up canceling it because I canceled it after the drop in the market. But I like this one too. I actually like the balance sheet on this company, and I like the space that they're in. I think a pullback to 280, hold the support at the 50-day, could be an interesting spot to take it for maybe a starter for a swing. Ideally, the place I'd really like to get it is probably closer to 250, and then I'm contemplating this actually in my long-term hold. So I would take it 250 as a starter, and then look to add at the 200-day, somewhere around 225 or so, and look to add there to my position and be patient enough to let it just go ahead and play out. But LLNW, we could find support here at the 50-day, right, at 275 or so. If it loses that support, maybe you get a 250 test. I mean, so, maybe I take a quarter at 275, I take a quarter at 250, and then I get my full position at 225. I don't know. I got to see how it moves, right? If it just drifts lower on lower volume, or if it spikes down on huge volume, then that might just kill that whole theory. We'll just have to see how it plays out. MYGN, had good news. I've been watching this one for a long time. I missed it. I was looking to try and take it for a swing, and big short interest, 51% short interest. I'm looking for a gap fill now. Pull back, fill this gap. What acted as resistance acts as support. Got the 50-day moving average there as potential support, which just crossed the what? The 200-day. So you got the golden cross. So I think this is kind of an interesting spot. 1960, 1950, probably more for a long-term hold or a swing position than a day trade, even though this does have a fairly small float, 48 million shares in the float. CLVS, last one. This is, we're going to finish this off with one from Peter. CLVS, entry 55, stop 56. Quiet, bud. Never fails. Say quiet, and he gives me 2 more barks. All right. Stochastics are overbought. This is my short call this week. Okay. 55 entry, 56 stop, risking $1 to make $2. Second target 49. This is my short stock. I wish I was watching this Friday because it was a great bear flag entry. 50 EMAs. Stochastics are overbought. MAs are still sloping down. I would love to get an entry on a red to green off of 50 EMA, giving it a 1 point stop. First target back to the bottom of the recent congestion, and second target 200 EMA. Okay. I like it. It's a well written out trade plan, and it does appear to be in a short term downtrend. I would only say that it did bounce pretty nicely. It looks like off of the 200-day. I don't know if they've got anything coming up, but if the IBB weakens, this could be a pretty good trading opportunity. It does look like the stochastics are starting to curl to the downside. So I like it, Peter. Good job. All right, that is it for my list of stocks to watch and market wrap for this week. If you like what I do here, check out our trading plans over at Alpha Wolf Trading. We have a great group of people, very committed, very smart, good group of people. It's not a big group. If you're looking for a big group of people, this isn't it. But we have a quality group of people. And if you're interested, check it out. I mentioned that I was going to send out an article. I have the article written up. I'm going to go ahead and just put it out next weekend. I made some tweaks on it. We're going to go ahead and run it next weekend. And I'll tell you, look, if you're thinking about joining Alpha Wolf Trading, wait a week. I'm going to run another promotion next weekend for Memorial Day, so. But keep an eye out for that article next week, okay? All right. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the rest of it. Enjoy your Sunday. And I will see you next week. Good luck trading. Remember, we got a lot coming up. We got the FOMC. We got this Trump stuff. We've had a warning shot. Don't chase. Have a plan. Know your risk reward.